By the release of Spider-Man Brand New Day, it'll serve as the 10th anniversary for Tom Holland and his role as Spider-Man, where his appearance as Spider-Man goes way back in 2016 in Captain America Civil War. As time passes by, we have seen him in his own Spider-Man movies and appearances in the Avengers franchise. In this video, I will be reviewing movies of Spider-Man played by Tom Holland, which the topic will center on the main movie, Spider-Man Brand New Day. So let's begin the video with the first three Spider-Man movies, Homecoming, Far From Home, and No Way Home, which those movies are directed by John Watts, including the cast which are listed right here. Let's start with the movie Spider-Man Homecoming in 2017. From what's happening, the movie focuses on the continuation of where he left off in Captain America Civil War, where Tony Stark met Peter Parker and continued their association with Peter Parker proving himself as a hero, leading to Spider-Man joining the Avengers, while trying to keep his identity hidden from his aunt and his friends, which is the overall focus of the movie's plot. By how the movie is distinguished from comic books, there was minimal references that can make it relevant. Apart from their inspiration of reimagining their high school story with more fun and excitement, Vulture, who is the main villain, is just the only reference point from their inspiration from comic books. Additionally, since that movie is focusing on the continuation of Tom Holland as Spider-Man, the story behind it referenced some details of Avengers and Captain America Civil War, feeling that the movie has left off from where Spider-Man appeared, which the movie has a purpose of watching movies in a sequential order to get to where Spider-Man Homecoming resumes its story. And that's it. Here's my final verdict for Spider-Man Homecoming. Overall movie was considerable for its continued storyline with Iron Man and his character development to reach his goal, which is being a member of the Avengers. Active and passive sequences were consistent with action scenes and interactive scenes, making the experience not too extreme, not too boring, but very interesting and funny in the get-go. The story was conflicting with Spider-Man's conflict with Vulture and Iron Man's approval. Since this movie was focused on its sequential storyline of the MCU, that can lead to some confusion by how the movie resumes where they left off, making it feel like viewers have missed something, including minimal comic book inspirations that only includes Vulture as the main view of its adaptation. And with that, this is my final rating for Spider-Man Homecoming. 4 1/4 or 4.25 out of 5 stars. For a movie, it was just a start for Tom Holland in a longer duration, but still, it is a great movie to kick off Peter's story and to display the new era of Spider-Man. Moving on to the next one, which is Spider-Man Far From Home in 2019. Continuing where they left off in Avengers Endgame, where the Avengers successfully defeated Thanos. In that movie, there happens to be more subtext. First is their traditional love story, where Peter has a crush on MJ and it continues with that development, which can lead to endearing and frustrating moments. Second is the emotional depth, since the movie is paying homage to Tony after he died, which puts some emotional weight on Peter trying to cope with that grief. Third is the main villain, Mysterio, where the initial sequence is him teaming up with Spider-Man and Nick Fury, making the viewers assume that he is a good guy until the climax hits, revealing that he is a bad guy. And that makes it a very effective plot twist for people who don't read or familiarize themselves with stories from comic books. And that's the movie subtext, where it displays more details to make the story very interesting and effective for a reaction. Next is their visuals in the movie. There was a lot of visuals in their action sequences, where it displays mimicked monsters by different elements and holographic or virtual reality sequences. With that, it fits that creativity from different point of views. Because Mysterio's power uses technical special effects to manipulate reality, while the production in real time does the same thing. And lastly, when it comes to inspirations from comic books or movies, besides Mysterio and the crossover of Nick Fury, they do have some surprises like J.K. Simmons, who appeared in the post-credit scene. But that is just only for appearances and not something to rely on strict storytelling. Same goes to Nick Fury. So once again, very minimal. And that's it. Here is my final verdict for Spider-Man Far From Home. The movie shows more sequences in storytelling, like the developing comedy, developing conflict, and emotional homage, in which the story has a convincing development by its love story and plot twists, while active and passive pacings remain consistent, achieving its entertainment value, including more visuals to enhance storytelling and creative production. While the movie referenced some details from past Spider-Man and Avengers movies, it still lacked inspiration to visually enhance the details of Spider-Man. And with that, this is my final rating for Spider-Man Far From Home. 4 1/4 or 4.25 out of 5 stars. So same as before, but it's still great. But it's just like the last one. Their references with writing a story based on Spider-Man was too simple, because it's like placing two characters to make up a conflict. But for Spider-Man No Way Home in 2021, it has more inspiration of Spider-Man and more conflicting moments. First is Peter's canon event, where the narrative of Spider-Man details the loss of their loved one. For Tobey, it's Uncle Ben. For Andrew, it's Gwen. And for Tom, it's Aunt May. So the movie has finally detailed that conflicting moment, making the experience emotional and impactful to the main character. Second is their cause and effect, or the main consequence of the story from its conflict. From where Far From Home left off, Peter's real identity was exposed, where the goal of the story is to erase that moment with the help of Doctor Strange, continuing that conflict from Far From Home, leading to a later conclusion. Third is the character comeback from the movie's concept of the multiverse, where the cast of the Spider-Man movies are in the main story, simultaneously detailing story references and adding more to the conflict. And lastly is their comic book inspiration, where the inspiration was taken from the comic book called Spider-Man One More Day, where the synopsis behind it is about Spider-Man's goal on being forgotten in order to save his secret identity and to save his aunt with the help of Doctor Strange. Apparently, this comic was hated for how it displays its ineffective decision-making, which Spider-Man has to sacrifice his marriage with Mary Jane to save Aunt May after being mistakenly shot by Kingpin's henchmen. Since Doctor Strange was unable to help Peter, he relies on the main villain, Mephisto, to make up with Peter's requests and ending the story from there. In the movie, they adapted that conflict of Peter's exposed identity, interactions with Doctor Strange, the passing of Aunt May, and an ending where the process of memory wipe was for the sake of saving the multiverse, the citizens of New York, and Peter's identity, which the movie improved its adaptive comic book story into a considerable one. With all those key takeaways, the story of No Way Home was very enticing for how it depicts its moments, comeback, and misfortune, making the overall experience a roller coaster of conflicts, sentiments, and nostalgia. And for J.K. Simmons, which I have said that he's only for appearances, he now has more sequences in the movie where he talks about Peter to the public, exposing him even more for the purpose of its conflict. And that's it. Here is my final verdict for Spider-Man No Way Home. The movie showcased more on the legacy of Spider-Man by its movie adaptations, with the roles and their interactions. also adapting its comic book story, improving its flaws and heroism, making the overall story heavy on its conflict, memorable by the roles, and emotional by its tragedy and sacrifice, including some sequences of mathematically impossible but stunning visuals. So overall experience was worthwhile with every moment being placed in the movie and how it intensifies. And with that, this is my final rating for Spider-Man No Way Home. 5 out of 5 stars. This movie was outstanding. By their comic book inspiration, the movie fulfilled that concept to make Spider-Man a better character in that type of conflict. Now that I've reviewed all 3 of them, it's time for the main subject of the video. The newly released Spider-Man Brand New Day, the 4th installment of Spider-Man played by Tom Holland. This movie is now directed by Destin Cretton instead of John Watts, and the cast which are listed right here. Now let's go over with the movie takeaways and analysis, starting with its overall presentation by its story and visuals by inspiration. From what's happening, it continues the aftermath of No Way Home, where Peter has to live all by himself without his friends and without the Avengers, but with his friends like Frank Castle or the Punisher and the police officer. By its story under overall presentation, it has a lot of developing leads, where the main concept is about Peter interacting with people who have forgotten him while facing the main villain of the plot. One of those developing leads is the love interest, where Peter has to interact with MJ to reveal the truth if MJ still loves him. Same goes to Ned and Bruce Banner, where the purpose is to befriend them again. Another is Peter's character development, where his grievance turned into something sympathetic. For example, the main villain suffers from sibling loss, which develops that desire of revenge, until the main villain gets some reassurance from Peter, which both of them share some relatable factors about their experience of family loss. And yet another is Sadie Sink's role, where her role remains a secret prior to its release, which the movie eventually reveals her role somewhere around the plot. And spoiler alert, Sadie Sink's role in Spider-Man Brand New Day is Jean Grey from X-Men, who is also the main villain of the movie. So with all the key points of the story, it shows a lot of character development from Peter and other characters, very effective plot twists by their conflict, and revealing details from its elevation, which story pacing by how well it was put together remained consistent and anticipating. Now for their inspiring visualization under overall presentation. By their presentation, they showcased comic book references and subtext to adapt to their likeness. For example, the illustrations from comic book covers, the association of the Punisher and the reenact conflict with Hulk, and the backstory of Jean Grey. They also reference some details from past Spider-Man movies. To elaborate, I will play a 6-second preview of the scenes from those movies.
Oh no! No! Ah!
Some of that web action. See you, chump.
All right, so you don't want to talk? There you go.
With those details, it elaborates Peter's character development in the movie. For example, with the detail of Peter destroying Eddie's camera. It is similar to Peter destroying a police car by throwing Scorpion while being mind-controlled, which shows the destructive side of Peter when he is being brainwashed or controlled. Another example is Peter losing his web because of heartbreak, which Brand New Day and Spider-Man 2 has that similarity. Last example is their slow-mo action, with Spider-Man shooting his web to retrieve something, or saving his partner from danger. With that, Those details show a lot of inspiration. More inspiration than No Way Home. Better visualizing and illustrating Spider-Man from certain references to make the story enticing by its legacy, making their overall presentation feel like a comic book, with dramatic sequences and occurring conflicts. Now for their overall experience, which may judge how well the story can impact viewers. As I said before, the story details made it anticipating for finding out the truth of the remembrance and Sadie Sink's role. Also emotional from referencing Aunt May and her relationship with Peter, where eventually Peter attempts to reason with Jean Grey in a sentimental manner. Also destructive by their action scenes and interactions taken from their comic book inspirations. With those key points, would I say it's impactful? My answer is yes, but there could have been more with the part of Peter sympathizing with Jean Grey, because Jean Grey's backstory felt too simple to elaborate on her revenge, and Peter's reassurance to Jean felt too little to elaborate. Why did I say that? Well, in Jean's backstory reference from the comic book Uncanny X-Men, she suffered from a tragic loss of her family that includes her mother, her father, and eventually her sister. In the movie, it is just her and her sister, Sarah Grey. For Peter, he has been through a lot. He has been through the loss of Uncle Ben, which is not referenced in Tom's perspective. He has been through the loss of Tony Stark. He has been through the loss of Aunt May. And he has been through the loss of Happy, Tony's friend and Aunt May's lover. But we'll just stick to Tony and Aunt May. So that small detail of emotional weight is limited by their elaborative past, which can drive more depth with their message of grievance, and more references to remember Peter's experience that made viewers emotional. Also elaborating more on Jean's family with that specific idea. But still, the experience was profound by how uplifting it can get with character development, how conflicting it can get with Peter's love interests, and how destructive the action can get by the interactions of Scorpion, the Punisher, Hulk, and Jean Grey. That's it for my analysis. Now for my final verdict. The movie shows more inspiration by Spider-Man comic books and movies to adapt to their likeness, and more illustrations from their conflicting story. The movie provided more character development to make it conflicting from the very beginning to bittersweet and uplifting at the very end, while having more interactions that involves destructive action and anticipating dialogues, where overall experience was solid with those key points. While the movie's emotional parts are distinctive, the emotional weight was limited by how the backstories are conveyed, which can make the experience more sentimental and heavy with its message. And with that, this is my final rating for Spider-Man Brand New Day. 4 3/4 or 4.75 out of 5 stars. So this movie is near perfect. But overall, it's one of the most inspiring movies that referenced very well about Spider-Man to make the story very likely. So overall opinion was pretty high. Now to my conclusion. Those are my reviews of Spider-Man movies played by Tom Holland. As you can tell by my ratings, they're pretty high. So all I can say is that Tom Holland never disappoints. Lastly, whoever's watching this video up to here, I would like to ask, what is the best Spider-Man movie from your perspective? It can be whatever, like Peter Parker, Miles Morales, or actors like Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield. Please do comment down below. And speaking of Miles Morales, there is a new movie that is coming out in the schedule of next year, which is Beyond the Spider-Verse, the continuation of Across the Spider-Verse. So subscribe to stay tuned with that future review. And that's it for this video. I did try to make this video comprehensive and objective as possible. So if there's anything that I missed out or anything that you want to add, then leave a comment below just in case. But if this video leaves something that is insightful from my standpoint, then give this video a like. So yeah, thank you for sticking around. Have a spectacular day.